Hey, how you doing? This is Jason and Pastor Dave, and well, I've got a question, and hopefully you've got an answer. Here's the question. I hear people talking at church and stuff about how God talks to them. You know, I heard this from God, or I was working on something and I felt God telling me this or that. I don't get the whole hearing God thing. Can you help me out with that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jason. I kind of cringe sometimes with how that phrase is used, almost flippantly amongst some Christians. It makes it sound as though they're hearing God in a way that I'm not, and I begin to feel like, what's wrong with me? And why can't I hear like that? And so the idea of hearing from God, it's not that I don't believe God can't speak audibly to somebody's heart. I don't discount that whatsoever. But for the most part, it's that, as Elijah, that still small voice, that what I didn't see it, I didn't perceive it as God speaking to me. He speaks to me through circumstances. He speaks to me, like you shared, a house fire, and how there's messages in that for you. And he speaks to us through things that we go through in life in just very subtle, still, small voices, and in ways that we know that he has spoken to our hearts. I find that really what's helped me more than anything to be able to say, and I don't throw that phrase around a lot, and like I say, I sort of wish people wouldn't, only because it reminds me of when my brother would go to my dad, and then he'd come outside and he'd say, "Dad wants me to tell you," but Dad didn't tell him to tell me that. I find out later. And that's how sometimes people use it. It's like a crowbar. They get you to do their will by using the God card on you. And the truth is, God does speak to our hearts through a variety of ways. But one of the clearest ways that God speaks to our hearts in the days that we live, and I believe intended by God, is through His Word. That if you'll wait with Him, every day, just have a time, the place where you can wait with the Lord and get into His Word. Pray before you start and ask Him to speak to your heart. And then as you're reading, so much of the time as you just sit there and allow the Word of God to speak to you, this is not just a book, it's living. It's the living Word of God. And He'll speak to your heart in a way. He'll answer your questions. He'll give you direction. He'll exhort you. He'll convict you. And much of the time, God speaks right here through the Word of God. And a lot of times I find that in churches and believers, that's one of the first things that goes to the wayside is their time in the Word of God, as though it's not as important. And I find that you're cutting off probably one of the greatest avenues that God has given to us to hear His voice, is to be in the Scriptures and allow Him to speak to your heart. Many times in my life, I've seen that over and over again as I wait with Him in the morning. And it's not like an audible voice, but I know He spoke to me through His Word, where I have to go apologize to somebody, or I have to go and ask their forgiveness, or I have to go and do something because I know He just pointed a direction in my life. And it was much of the time, if not most of the time, it's right here in the Word of God.
I've always felt that God's always spoken to me the loudest and the clearest through His Word.
Yeah, that's good.
It's alive, and it's what it's for.
If I can encourage anybody, this is really something that God's kind of carved out in my heart. If I can encourage anybody to do anything, it would be wait with the Lord prayerfully in the Word of God. Approach the Bible. I've heard a fellow one time say this. Approach the Bible prayerfully. That means when you come across something in the Bible, don't wait until you finish the chapter. Start praying then, about it. Just bring it to the Lord because He's just spoke to you. Read the Bible expectantly. Where not just prayerfully, but expectantly. That I approach the Bible, I expect Him to speak to me because it's His Word. And so I never approach the Bible in my studies without a pencil. And this isn't by accident that this is here. This is the way it always is. And a pad of paper, because if I don't have a pencil in my hand, all that means is I really don't expect God to talk to me. But when I come before Him, I'm listening. I want to hear. So it's prayerfully, it's expectantly, and it's conversationally. I'll carry on a conversation with Him, and it becomes prayer much of the time as I'm reading the Word of God and as he speaks to my heart in some particular area, I'll start talking to him about it. And then I feel like he's talking to me about the direction because he's giving it to me right here. This is probably the greatest thing that God has given to us this side of heaven, is the Spirit of God speaking to us through his word. And our taking that jewel of the treasure of his word and allowing it to be a part of our life.
So if you feel like you're not hearing from God and you truly, genuinely want to hear God, get in his word. Spend time in the word. He's speaking to us. Are we listening? Thanks for joining us.
Very good.